I grew up believing I was the plainest girl in our Amish community. No one ever said those exact words to my face. They didn't have to. Sometimes silence speaks louder than unkindness. When the other young women gathered before Sunday service, they braided one another's hair and laughed together. I usually stood a little farther away. Not because they asked me to, because I had already convinced myself I didn't belong beside them. Every morning, before the sun touched the fields, I knelt beside my bed and prayed the same prayer. Lord, I don't ask to be beautiful. I only ask you to let me stop feeling ashamed when I see my own reflection. I prayed that prayer for years. The answer never came the way I expected. My name was Hannah. I lived with my parents and my younger brother on a small farm outside our Amish settlement. Father believed every person should work with grateful hands. Mother believed every person should speak with a gentle heart. They never treated me as though I lacked anything. The struggle existed only inside me. When I was a little girl, another child once looked at me during quilting day and whispered to her sister, "She doesn't look like the other girls." They probably forgot those words before supper. I never did. As I grew older, I became skilled at avoiding mirrors. If I happened to pass one, I looked away quickly. I preferred washing dishes or feeding chickens to standing where I might compare myself with someone else. Mother noticed long before anyone else. One evening, while we folded fresh laundry together, she quietly asked, "Why do you always hide when someone brings out the family photograph?" I smiled without meeting her eyes. "I don't enjoy pictures." She folded another towel. "No, you don't enjoy seeing yourself." I didn't answer, because she was right. The following Sunday, our community gathered for worship. The meeting house was filled with familiar faces. Children sat quietly beside their parents. Older couples greeted one another with warm smiles. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet something happened that morning which confused me. After the service ended, several elderly men stopped Father before we reached our buggy. One after another, they thanked him. "You've raised a remarkable daughter." Father smiled politely. "Thank you." Another man added, "She reminds me of my late mother." A third said, "The kindness in her eyes is something this world needs." I stood there awkwardly. Surely they were speaking about someone else. As we rode home, I finally asked Father, "Why were they saying those things?" He shrugged, "Because they meant them." "But I don't understand." Father looked at me kindly. "You think people only notice a face." He paused. "I've lived long enough to know they remember a heart." I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But the next quilting afternoon made it difficult. Several young women were stitching together a wedding quilt for one of our friends. I arrived a little late and quietly took an empty seat. The conversation stopped for a moment. Then one girl smiled politely. "You can sit over there." There was nothing rude about her words. Yet I noticed something. Every other chair had someone beside it. Mine was the only one alone. As the afternoon continued, I heard bits of conversation drifting across the room. I heard Samuel walked Hannah home after church. Really? He probably felt sorry for her. A few girls laughed softly. I kept sewing, pretending not to hear. My stitches remained straight. My heart did not. That evening I walked to the pasture carrying a small bucket of grain for the chickens. When I was alone, I finally allowed myself to cry. "I don't understand, Lord. I try to be kind. I try to help. I try to forgive. Why is it still so hard to feel enough?" The wind moved gently through the tall grass. No answer came. Only silence. The next morning, Mother found me hanging fresh laundry outside. Without saying a word, she began helping. After several minutes, she asked, "Do you know why your grandmother planted apple trees?" I smiled faintly. "Because she loved apples." Mother laughed. "Partly." She pointed toward one of the oldest trees near the barn. That tree was twisted when it was young. Several neighbors wanted to cut it down. They said it would never produce good fruit. I looked at the old tree. Every autumn it carried more apples than any other. Grandmother refused. She said something I'll never forget. Mother looked directly into my eyes. "Never judge a tree during the season when it's still growing." Those words comforted me for a while, but comfort didn't erase loneliness. Weeks passed. Harvest season arrived. One afternoon, Father injured his shoulder lifting heavy sacks of grain. Without anyone asking, neighbors began arriving to help. Young men worked beside Father until sunset. Older women brought meals to our kitchen. I spent the day carrying water, preparing food, and thanking everyone who came. Late that evening, after the work was finished, one of the older widowers stopped me before leaving. "Hannah." "Yes, Mr. Yoder? I've watched you for years." I felt embarrassed. "You have?" He nodded. "When my wife became sick, you visited every Thursday. You read scripture to her. You washed dishes without being asked. You stayed long after everyone else left." I smiled gently. "I only did what anyone would do." He slowly shook his head. "No. Many people wanted to help. You stayed." His eyes became moist. "My wife used to tell me something." "What was that?" "That young woman doesn't know how beautiful a faithful heart becomes with time." I couldn't speak. No one had ever described me that way. As he walked toward his buggy, I noticed several young women watching from across the yard. Their expressions weren't warm. They looked confused. Some even looked jealous. For the first time, I realized they believed the older men admired me for reasons they didn't understand. They couldn't see what those men remembered. They remembered hospital visits, funeral meals, quiet acts of service, long afternoons spent helping without expecting praise. But whispers have a way of growing faster than truth. Within days, people began talking. Some wondered why respected men always spoke kindly to me. Others whispered that I must be trying to gain attention. The rumors spread quietly, and I had no idea they were about to place me in the middle of the most painful season of my life, because someone was about to accuse me of something I had never done. And before the next Sunday service, the bishop would ask to speak with me alone. The moment I heard that the bishop wanted to speak with me after Sunday worship, my heart began to race. I searched my memory again and again. Had I offended someone? Had I broken one of our church rules without realizing it? Had I spoken carelessly? The more I thought about it, the less I understood. The worship service felt longer than usual. Every hymn passed without my hearing a single word. When the final prayer ended, families slowly gathered outside beneath the maple trees. Children laughed as they chased one another across the grass. Women uncovered baskets filled with homemade bread. The men stood in small groups talking about the coming harvest. Everything looked peaceful. Only my heart wasn't. The bishop walked toward me with the same calm expression he always carried. "Hannah." "Yes, Bishop. When you have a moment, would you come with me?" His voice was gentle. There was no anger in it. Still, I felt every eye around us turn in my direction. I followed him to the small room beside the meeting house. The room was plain. 2 wooden chairs, a table, an open Bible. Sunlight poured through the single window. The bishop motioned for me to sit. For several moments, he said nothing. Then he asked a question that caught me completely by surprise. "Are you happy here?" I frowned. I don't know." He smiled kindly. That wasn't the answer I expected. "I don't think I've been happy for a long time." He nodded as though he had already guessed. "Why?" I looked down at my folded hands. "Because every time I look at the other young women, I feel like I don't belong among them." The bishop remained silent. "I know I'm not beautiful. I accepted that years ago. But sometimes," my voice trembled, "I wonder why God made me this way." For a long moment, the bishop looked toward the window instead of answering. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know what people have been saying these past few weeks?" I slowly nodded. "I've heard some of it. They think the older men in our community favor you." Fresh embarrassment washed over me. "I don't understand why. I've never encouraged anyone. I've never wanted attention." "I know." His answer surprised me. "You know? I know your character." He leaned forward. "But the young women don't understand something." "What?" "They're watching what happens today. They're not remembering what happened years ago. His words confused me. I don't understand. The bishop smiled gently. Neither do they. He reached for the Bible but didn't open it. Tell me something. How often did you visit Sister Mary before she passed away? I thought for a moment. Every Thursday. For almost 2 years. And who asked you to do that? No one. He nodded. When Brother Eli lost his wife, who brought meals to his house every Tuesday? I did. For how long? About 6 months. And when the Miller family lost their barn during the storm. His eyes met mine, who stayed until midnight helping the women prepare food for the workers. I swallowed quietly. I did. The bishop smiled. You've answered every question the same way. I was only helping. Exactly. He folded his hands together. You believe those moments were small, but they weren't small to the people who received them. His words settled deep inside me, because I had never thought about those memories again. To me, they were simply ordinary days. The bishop continued. Those older men who speak kindly to you, they aren't admiring your appearance. They're honoring your faithfulness. Tears filled my eyes. I never wanted anyone to notice. I know. And that's exactly why they do. I couldn't speak. For years, I had believed everyone saw only my face. Perhaps some people had seen something entirely different. The bishop's expression became more serious. But there is another reason I asked you here. My stomach tightened. What is it? He hesitated before answering. 3 young women came to see me this week. I stared at him. They did? He nodded. They believe you're trying to attract attention from the unmarried men. My heart dropped. What? They said several young men have spoken highly of your kindness. They've mistaken respect for courtship. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've never... I know. He raised one hand gently. I never believed the accusation. Relief washed over me. Then why tell me? Because gossip grows in silence. He paused. And because I wanted you to hear the truth before you heard the rumors. I lowered my eyes. I've tried so hard not to stand out. The bishop smiled sadly. My child. A lantern doesn't choose to be noticed. It simply shines. I sat there quietly, letting those words settle into my heart. When our conversation ended, I stepped outside. Rebecca was waiting near the buggy. She hurried toward me. What happened? I forced a smile. Nothing bad. She searched my face. Then why are you crying? I'm not sure. She slipped her arm through mine. As we walked together, I noticed 3 young women watching us from across the churchyard. One of them quickly looked away. Another whispered something I couldn't hear. The third simply stared. For the first time, I realized the bishop had been right. This wasn't about me. It was about misunderstanding. People were creating stories because they couldn't see the whole picture. That evening, while helping Mother prepare supper, I finally asked the question that had lived inside my heart for years. Mother. She looked up from the bread dough. Yes? Have you ever wished you were more beautiful? She stopped kneading. Instead of answering immediately, she walked to the cupboard and removed an old wooden box. Inside were several faded photographs. She handed me one. I hardly recognized the young woman smiling beside Father. You were beautiful, Mother laughed softly. So people said. I looked at her in surprise. Then you understand. Oh, I understand more than you think. She gently took the photograph back. When I was your age, people complimented my face almost every Sunday. She smiled sadly. But do you know what frightened me? I shook my head. I wondered if anyone would still notice me after my beauty faded. Her eyes met mine. Now look at you. You've spent years worrying no one would notice you because of your appearance. She gently held my hands. We both believed the same lie. What lie? That our worth depended on what people first saw. I felt tears forming again. Mother smiled. One day, you'll understand something. What? The people who truly matter. They always see beyond the face. I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But neither of us knew that before the month ended, the jealousy growing inside a few hearts would become something much more painful. Because one accusation was about to spread through the entire community. And this time, it wouldn't stop with whispers. For the next several days, I tried to forget what the bishop had told me. I returned to my ordinary routine. Before sunrise, I milked the cows with Father. After breakfast, I helped Mother bake bread for 3 neighboring families. In the afternoons, I mended clothes or gathered vegetables from the garden. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inside the community, everything had. At first, the whispers stayed quiet. When I entered a room, conversations ended. When I smiled at someone, they smiled politely before turning away. It wasn't everyone, only a few. But it was enough. Rebecca noticed before I did. One afternoon, as we finished quilting at Sister Miller's house, she walked beside me instead of joining the other girls. "Hannah." "Yes, you've heard what they're saying." I looked down at the dirt road. "A little." She sighed. "It's getting worse." I didn't answer, because I already knew. One rumor had become many. Some girls believed I secretly enjoyed the attention older men gave me. Others claimed I acted humble, only so people would praise me even more. One even suggested I was trying to impress unmarried young men by helping widows and elderly families. The rumors hurt, not because they were true, because they turned kindness into something selfish. That evening, I knelt beside my bed. For months, my prayers had been about my appearance. "Lord, please make me prettier." That night, the words wouldn't come. Instead, I whispered something different. "Lord, if you don't change my face, please don't let this jealousy change my heart." For the first time in years, I cried without asking God to make me beautiful. I only asked Him to keep me kind. The next Sunday tested that prayer. After worship, everyone gathered outside as usual. I carried a basket of fresh bread toward the fellowship tables when I heard someone behind me. "You always make sure people are watching." The voice was quiet, but sharp. I turned. It was Martha. She folded her arms across her chest. "You don't have to pretend. I'm sorry." She stepped closer. "We know exactly what you're doing." Several young women nearby stopped talking. I could feel them listening. "I don't understand. You visit widowers. You help older men. You stay late at every gathering." She smiled without kindness. "And somehow, they all think you're wonderful." My hands tightened around the basket. "I've never asked anyone to speak about me, but you enjoy it." "No, I don't." She laughed softly. "You expect us to believe that?" Rebecca stepped forward. "That's enough." But Martha wasn't finished. "You know what the saddest part is?" She looked directly into my eyes. "You aren't even pretty." The words landed harder than I expected. For a moment, everything became completely still. She continued, "And yet somehow every older man talks about your goodness. Do you know how that feels for the rest of us?" I finally understood. This wasn't about my face. It never had been. It was about comparison. Before I could answer, another voice interrupted. "That's enough." Everyone turned. The bishop had been standing only a few steps away. No one had noticed him. He walked calmly toward us. His face wasn't angry. It was disappointed. "Martha," he spoke gently, "walk with me." She lowered her eyes. The two of them quietly disappeared toward the meeting house. The churchyard became silent. No one knew what to say. I quietly placed the bread on the table and walked away. Not because I was angry, because I didn't trust myself not to cry. I found an empty bench behind the meeting house. A few minutes later, someone sat beside me. It wasn't Rebecca. It was Brother Eli. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier. "Hannah." I quickly wiped my eyes. "I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize." He looked toward the fields before speaking again. "I heard what happened." I nodded silently. He smiled. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. The first time you came to my house after my wife died, I almost sent you home." I looked at him in surprise. "You did?" "I didn't want visitors. I didn't want pity." He chuckled softly. "But you ignored me." A small smile appeared on my face. "I remember. You simply walked into my kitchen. You washed every dirty dish. You swept the floor. You filled my wood box. And before leaving, he paused. You prayed with me. His voice became quieter. That was the first night I slept peacefully after my wife died. I couldn't hold back my tears. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. He smiled warmly. The people speaking against you today, they weren't there. They never saw those moments. They only see compliments. They never saw the reasons. His words healed something inside me. For the first time, I realized an important truth. People who misunderstand your heart usually haven't witnessed your quiet sacrifices. Later that afternoon, the bishop came to our farm, not to correct me, to speak with Father. I accidentally overheard part of their conversation through the open kitchen window. The bishop said, "Your daughter has become the center of something unfortunate." Father answered quietly, "I know. I wish I could stop it." The bishop shook his head. "You can't stop gossip, but you can protect the person it's aimed at." I stepped away before hearing anything more. That evening, Father found me sitting beneath the old apple tree. He sat beside me without speaking. After several minutes, he finally asked, "Do you know why people become jealous?" I shrugged. "Because someone has something they want." He nodded. "Sometimes, but often, they become jealous because someone reminds them of the person they wish they were." I looked at him. "I don't feel like that kind of person," he smiled. "That's exactly why you are." The next morning, before sunrise, I knelt beside my bed once again. This time my prayer was different. "Lord, don't let me become bitter. Don't let other people's opinions decide who I become. I can't control what they say, but I can choose how I answer." As I stood to begin another ordinary day, I had no idea my prayer was about to be tested in the hardest way yet. Because before the next Sunday, the entire community would gather for a church council meeting, and my name would be spoken in front of everyone. The entire week passed beneath a heavy silence. No one spoke to me directly about the rumors. No one accused me to my face. But I could feel the distance. Women who once greeted me warmly now offered only polite smiles. A few young girls stopped asking if I would sit beside them during quilting. Even some of the young men seemed uncomfortable speaking with me, afraid that a simple conversation might become tomorrow's gossip. I kept praying, not for my appearance anymore, not even for the rumors to stop, only for the strength to remain the same person God had called me to be. By Saturday evening, Father quietly told us that the church council would meet after Sunday worship. Whenever the community gathered that way, everyone knew something important needed to be addressed. I hardly slept that night. The next morning, our buggy rolled toward the meeting house under a gray sky. The air felt unusually still. As families arrived, I noticed people speaking in hushed voices. Several glanced in my direction before quickly looking away. Rebecca squeezed my hand. "No matter what happens today, I'm beside you," I smiled weakly. "Thank you." The worship service ended. Instead of preparing for the fellowship meal, everyone remained seated. The bishop slowly stood. His voice was calm, as it always was. "My brothers and sisters, our community has always believed that truth should be spoken with love. And when misunderstanding grows, it must be replaced with truth before it becomes division." The room became completely silent. I lowered my eyes. I knew my name was coming. The bishop continued. "Over the past several weeks, there have been many conversations concerning one of our young women. I heard someone shift on a wooden bench. Several people looked toward me. My hands began to tremble. Then the bishop said something I never expected. This morning, we will not discuss Hannah. We will discuss ourselves." The room fell even quieter. He looked around at every family before speaking again. "I have heard people praise her. I have heard people question her. I have heard people assume things about her heart." He paused. "And very few of those people ever asked her a single question." No one moved. The bishop turned toward the congregation. "Some of you believe the respect shown to Hannah comes from her appearance." He gently shook his head. "It does not. It comes from years of quiet service that many of you were never present to witness. Then something happened that I will never forget. Brother Eli slowly stood. "I would like to speak." The bishop nodded. Brother Eli faced the congregation. "When my wife was dying, many people promised to visit. They meant well. But life became busy." He looked toward me. "Hannah came every Thursday. For nearly 2 years. She never asked anyone to notice. She simply came." When he sat down, another person stood. It was Sister Mary's daughter. When Mother could no longer read her Bible, Hannah read to her every week. I never thanked her properly. Then another voice spoke. And another. An elderly couple shared how I had repaired blankets during one difficult winter. A widow remembered the firewood that mysteriously appeared outside her home. A family whose barn had burned down recalled that I stayed until midnight cooking for volunteers. Story after story filled the room. Many of them I had completely forgotten, because I had never done those things expecting to be remembered. As I listened, tears quietly rolled down my face. Across the room, I noticed Martha. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the floor. When the room finally became silent again, the bishop spoke one last time. "There is a lesson here for all of us. We are often quick to compare faces, but God has always looked at hearts. No mirror can measure kindness, no photograph can capture faithfulness, and no rumor can erase a life lived in quiet service." Then he looked directly at me. "Hannah, would you come here for a moment?" My legs felt weak as I walked to the front of the meeting house. The bishop smiled warmly. "You once asked me why people respected you," I nodded. "I remember. Today, you have your answer." I couldn't speak. He gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Never apologize for becoming the woman God created you to be." I began to cry openly. Not because I felt proud. Because for the first time in my life, I believed I wasn't lacking anything. After the meeting ended, people slowly began leaving their benches. Before I could step outside, someone quietly approached me. It was Martha. Her eyes were red. "I owe you an apology." I looked at her without saying anything. "I thought people admired you because you wanted attention." She wiped away a tear. "The truth is, I was jealous. I spent so much time wishing people noticed me. I never noticed how much you were doing for everyone else." She lowered her head. "I'm sorry." For just a moment, I remembered every whisper, every painful comment, every tear I had cried alone. Then I remembered something else, the countless times God had forgiven me for my own wrong attitudes. I gently took her hand. "I forgive you." She looked at me with surprise. "You do?" I smiled. "If I ask God to forgive me every day, how could I refuse to forgive someone else?" She hugged me tightly. That afternoon, as our buggy rolled toward home, Father looked across the fields and quietly asked, "So, what did you learn?" I smiled through tears. "For years, I begged God to change my face," Father nodded. "And now?" I looked toward the horizon where the sunlight covered the fields with gold. "Now I understand. He was changing my heart all along." Mother reached across the buggy and gently squeezed my hand. No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. Years have passed since that Sunday. The girl who once avoided every mirror still lives inside my memories. Sometimes I think about her when I pass a window and catch my reflection. I no longer ask God to make me beautiful. Instead, I ask Him for something far greater. A heart that remains gentle when others are unkind. Hands that continue serving even when no one notices. The courage to forgive before bitterness can take root. Because beauty fades. Praise fades. Even memories fade. But a faithful heart leaves a mark that time cannot erase. I once believed being the ugliest girl in my Amish community was my greatest curse. I was wrong. The real curse was believing my worth depended on my face. The greatest blessing of my life came the day I finally understood that the people who truly mattered had never been looking at my face in the first place. They had been looking at my heart all along.